So what do you do? Now that you've finished your design, how do you prepare for doing this actual project? Well, you need a project timeline. Okay, so first you do plan the landscape design as Allison was describing. And then, oh my goodness, you need to develop sources for chips and cardboard? Yes. So we'll talk about that. Then you need to remove your lawn or weeds early in the spring or the mid-fall. We'll talk about how to do that. Then you need to finish your lawn weed removal project about the same time that you buy your landscape plants, which will, and oh, what a surprise. Fall is the best time to plant. We can do that. Okay, step one, lose your lawn or weeds. So first, you knock down or mow the existing vegetation, and you mow down really to the very shortest setting that you can get, and you can leave the clippings right on the lawn. If you have a weedy area, remove the clippings, because of course they're going to have weed seeds in them, and we don't want that. Okay, so then you soak the area with water, and you want to do that. And then you edge the lawn. If it goes up against a driveway or a sidewalk, edge it. Because what you're going to do is you want to avoid the runoff. You don't want any water from this new project to run off onto that sidewalk. And you want to keep the mulch that you're going to install from spilling onto the paving. And you want to stop any runner weeds that might be someplace else from coming back into your garden. We really don't want to have that. And then those pieces of lawn that you remove from the edging, pile them up in some place inside the area that you're landscaping, and they're going to make a mound, okay? And any other leftover soil that you happen to have from someplace else, add it in there. Anything that's not weedy, add it in, and build any other lawn scraps that you have. You can add compost in there. You want to create a mound because it makes a really wonderful part of the landscape. It also creates an area that has excellent drainage, of course. So then you're going to plant when it comes time, in the fall, you're going to plant any large plants, any 5-gallon or larger plants. This will probably tend to be, if you're planting a tree that is a large plant. So you're going to make a hole of the proper depth. What is the proper depth for a 5-gallon plant? I think many of us have thought about this question, but here there's something, the first element is, of course, you want it so that the crown will be just higher than the top of the mulch will be. We're going to talk a lot more about the mulch, but the mulch is going to be about 4 inches above the top of the soil. So what that means is you're going to plant the plant temporarily on an elevated mound of soil. So if this is where the soil is right now, you're going to plant that 5-gallon plant up on a mound a little bit higher than that. So it's going to look planted up higher because eventually there's going to be mulch that comes up to this level. Step 3, that cardboard. You're going to completely cover the ground with corrugated cardboard, except for where there happen to be those plants that you love that you're keeping. Those can stay there. You won't cover them with cardboard. And you also put cardboard on, those mounds that you created. Well, you're going to mulch those too. And you also don't want weeds coming up there. So you're going to put cardboard over that. You want to overlap one piece of cardboard with another by 6 inches. Now, let's talk about, does this need to be cardboard? We're going to call this cardboard the base layer. And this base layer can be corrugated cardboard, like big boxes, or it can be builder's paper, which comes in big rolls. You can see the big roll here on the slide, which is by far the easiest thing to use, but you have to buy it. So, you know, time is money, you decide. And you need 2 layers of that builder's paper, again, overlapped by 6 inches, you know, one long roll here, the next long roll overlapped, or newspaper, 4 or more sheets of newspaper. If you use newspaper, you have to make sure to do this on a non-windy day, or the newspapers will be everywhere. So where do you get the corrugated cardboard? Which I've used newspaper, I've used all 3 of these. And I started out using newspaper. It's the most work of any of these, but that was back when I got a daily newspaper. So then it was easy, it just arrived. Then I started using corrugated cardboard, and you can get corrugated cardboard. It's hard to get it at hardware stores anymore because they tend to bundle all their cardboard up and send it off. You can get it at bicycle stores, stores that sell spas, stores that sell stoves, big appliances, anything that comes really big in corrugated cardboard boxes. You just have to go there, ask them, and then you go back by where their recycling is, and then you take it home in your vehicle. So that takes some time. And builder's paper, that works well. So you wet down the cardboard as you go, and to keep it in place, and then it becomes more pliable. So step 4, okay, we're gonna add more layers. So you look here in the bottom layer, you've already got your soil, then you've got the weeds or grass that you mowed down, then you've got your cardboard, then you put down some compost, and then you put down some mulch. Let's look at those layers, okay? You're gonna add 1 inch of compost. This compost, it speeds up the decomposition of that former lawn, because in that compost, there are gonna be some little microbacteria. They're already doing little things. There might even be a worm in that compost, you never know. So that's gonna start things going. You really wanna do that. And then you're gonna add mulch. So mulch is really important to this process. You want 4 inches of wood chips for mulch. And the easiest thing to do is to get, go and get 4 inches of fir bark. You can just do that. But fir bark is expensive. So if you have a tree chipped, can you use that? Yes, you could use that. You could get arbor or lumber mulch, and you could use 3 inches of that, and then put 1 inch of lovely looking fir bark on top. And then you have something that looks beautiful, but didn't cost you as much as if you used all fir bark. Same thing, you could put, a little compost on top. Some combination, whatever works for you. We want to issue a few caveats about doing sheet mulching. Don't do it right up near your house because, first of all, you don't want wood products right up near your house because it can be a fire hazard to have those wood chips right up next to within 5 feet of your house. And if you have poorly draining soil, just use the mulch. And you probably don't want to use the cardboard because you're going to have a hard enough time having drainage work well. And then the other thing is that if you have a lot of voles, we're not talking about gophers, but voles, that base layer can encourage them to hang out. So you want to avoid that. So let's look at a couple of other during and after things, during and after examples. Here on the left is when Allison was installing cardboard for her side landscape. You see how she's overlapping the cardboard? And these are former cardboard boxes. You can see it, okay? And she's going around plants that she already has installed. And here on the right is what it looks like. Just beautiful landscaping. And you see how you don't see the cardboard, you only see the mulch. Here is a large scale area conversion where they took out all that really worn out lawn. That could be an old pasture, but it isn't. I mean, it happens to be lawn, but it could just as easily be old pasture or an old weedy area. And they sheet mulched all of that. And then they installed summer adapted plants. And then they have used compost in the sheet mulch, and that really helped the plants do very well. And then here's a home front yard, but it really looks like bare soil. So if you had bare soil, you could start from there and just put down the cardboard and put down the mulch and off you go. And then you could wind up with a yard full of plants. And here is a very boring, straightforward lawn that does nothing but use water. And then the after has just gorgeous landscape value and personality, a new path, and very low water use. Just absolutely gorgeous. So now you've done all that prep work. Now, could you please, move forward? Feel like you're getting something, seeing something actually go in. Well, you still need water. So you're going to put water where you'll need it. In many landscaping setups, you need water for more than just irrigating your plants. So you're first going to start out figuring out where else on your land you are also going to want water. You might want it for water tanks or pumps or beautiful water features. You also are going to figure out where you want that underground irrigation and supply line to be. Are you going to want in-ground valves? Are you going to want just hose in? Are you going to want some new hose bibs someplace? What are you going to want? Are there some shutoffs you want? Figure all that out and get that installed before you start working on the irrigation for specific lines. And you have to then, after you've got that base irrigation installed, then it's time to go, it's time to do hardscaping. Now we put in our paths, our driveways, our walls, all of that goes in. And you have to make sure that you do that hardscaping before you put in the plants, and you put in the paths before you put in the plants. So you put in the plants relative to the paths, so that as you walk along the paths, you see the plantings. And you start with the short plants next to the paths and the taller plants further away from the paths. It will all make sense. You also need to make sure that you can get the irrigation across the paths. So you have to have, like a piece of irrigation tubing that goes, that holds the irrigation tubing you want, but a piece of PVC that goes under the path that will carry your irrigation tubing. And you'll set the stepping stones in, and those are going to be, you have to set them in so they're going to be even with where the top of the mulch will be, not just even with where the current soil will be. But you're going to have your mulch up 4 inches higher, so you want your stepping stones higher as well. So what might you make your paths out of? Because you're going to have the fir bark, they're integrated with the plants. You could use fir bark for your paths. You could use something else also. As in this path here, you could use decomposed granite, which is like teeny tiny little, looks like sand, but it's really ground up rock. Pea gravel, rocks, gravel, bricks, flagstone, whatever you want. And for shape and width, the really important thing is that it matches, it goes with the nature of your house, the nature of the surroundings. You look at the two paths here on the left and the right, and what if you switch those left and right? Would the path on the right go with the house on the left and vice versa? No, they really wouldn't. But look at them. The one on the right is such a geometric path, and that's such a geometric house. So modern, perfect. The one on the left, such a naturalistic path, and such a relaxed, comfortable, organic house. This is what you want to do when you design the kind of path you want to have for your house if you do add a path when you do your landscaping. And then install borders for your paths. If your paths are going to have borders, you could just use bender board, you could use river rock, you could have anything that you want. Pinterest, again, as Allison said, a great, great source for inspiration. So you might, if you live on any kind of slope, have a landscape space where you might want to consider terracing. Terracing is nice if you want to have a flat space for landscaping, but it's on a slope. So it depends on how much elevation gain you have in that planting area, but if you're going to do terracing, you want to get the terracing done before you start to put any plants in and before you start to set the irrigation in. So you also want to shape your mound to get it all shaped before you do set in any irrigation and before you set in the plants. You can put in that mound, you don't have to spend lots of money to get your mound started. You can get those lawn edges, sod cutting. You might be able to get some stuff from neighbors. You never know what they might be doing, you know. If you're building a dry stream bed, which we'll talk about a little bit later, you're going to be taking soil out of one area, put it into the mound. So you might decide, hey, you know, if I want a mound, maybe I also want a dry stream bed. Or if I want a dry stream bed, maybe I also want a mound. It's good to locate a mound closer to a corner of, say, you know, in the area you're designing rather than the center. There's a good balance that way, and shape it to a gentle natural rise. I'm not a big fan of the shape of this particular mound, but someday I'll come up with a better slide for one. So, dry stream bed. Plan for this to slope from the top to the bottom so it looks natural. You see how this one goes, oh look, it was higher and it flows to a lower area. I recommend using river rock because it has a more natural look than if you used rock that had more jagged edges. And you see that what you do is you start out and you have to dig out an area so that it's lower, and when you put in the rocks, you still have a depression that forms the stream bed. And you put in the dry stream bed before you install any plants. And then when I do a dry stream bed, it's the one place that I use landscape fabric because I really don't want to weed in there, and there aren't going to be any plants actually in the stream bed. But I would put something down under before I started to install the rocks because it really keeps out the weeds. So you put in the largest rocks first and smaller rocks and then a little gravel. So planting, we're finally at planting, aren't you thrilled? Okay, so for non-natives, you would mix the native soil or whatever good planting medium you're using. And, you know, ideally, you know, put in some compost, and ideally would be something that, you know, you've gotten from your own compost pile, and then you can, you know, put in some slow release fertilizer. It'll be fine to do that with non-natives. But with natives, don't add additional fertilizer. It shortens the life of native plants to do that. So You can add some homemade compost if you think that the soil warrants that. And then, now here's where things differ from the usual methods. So you dig down into the wood chips, kind of creating a little V-shaped hole, and you move the chips far enough away from the hole that you can see down to where the cardboard is. What I do is I'll move all the chips that I dig up to like over to 2/3 of the side of the hole, but on one side of the hole, I don't pile up any chips so I can see what that 4 inches high looks like. I want to know where that 4 inches is. It's important. Then you water, you can, as it shows in this slide, you can, if you want to, use a utility knife and open up the cardboard down below. But you don't have to do that because this cardboard is going to decompose once you start watering the plant. It simply disappears and it's not there anymore. So this is kind of more for you than for the plant. Then you're going to water the plants. Plant the plants, pardon me. You water the hole slowly and deeply, you know, the way you usually would. Then you take some of that soil that you had in your wheelbarrow and you partially fill the opening. You mound up soil in the center to give a place for the roots of the plant that you're going to take out of the container to go. And you tamp down the mound. Then you gently take the plant out of the container and you place the plant on the soil mound with the roots around that, that mound that you made, like that. And then you're going to set the plant at the correct height. And what you want is you want to set the plant so that the crown of the plant is just above the top of the 4 inches of mulch. If it's too high or too low, adjust the height of that mound of soil underneath the plant. Put in a little more soil and tamp it down. Take out a little soil until that mound, when tamped down, is just the height for that plant to sit on. Then you fill in all the way around with plant medium until the plant is planted and the crown is sitting just a bit above the top of the mulch. The plant's planted, and then you create a little teeny moat around the plant. And then you put in the mulch right around the plant, but leaving 2 or 3 inches around the side because you want to make sure that the mulch won't touch the crown of the plant, because that could over time, particularly in the rainy months of the year, cause rot to set in. So then you want to water in very gently and deeply, just as you would with any new plant. And now you're off and running. Okay, so now irrigation. So you plan your irrigation. Allison had talked about this before, and you do need to plan your irrigation. And it's depending on the level of experience you have, that determines how much you actually put down on paper, but it's good to write down and do a schematic for how much, for what you're gonna want. This is a schematic that I did for our vegetable garden. And what you see is that I have used different colors for different kinds of materials. That then gives me a way to, an easy way to then be able to estimate my materials list on the right. So I can see when I go into my garage and then off to the plumbing store, do I have everything I need? It's so good to have everything you need when you start to build the irrigation. Someone has asked the question, well, you know, do you install the irrigation before or after you plant? It depends on the kind of irrigation you use. We'll get to that. This is the earlier version I used. of irrigation that I used. So this one I installed before and this one I installed after, depends. You need some kind of a controller to turn the water on and off, unless you're gonna stand there with a hose every day or every other day. And so you can use whatever you have, or you can get a new controller. With one exception, if you have low water natives, it's good to pick out a controller that allows you to have a frequency of watering once a week or less often than once a week. Rain monitoring, which is usually a little add-on that you can get for many controllers, is a wonderful feature, and that means that if it rains, the controller automatically doesn't water. And it's also good that if you have a circuit on which you will be starting seeds, that you can set it so that that the valve will go on more often than once a day. So you can use this flexible black plastic tubing and connect little 1/4-inch tubing. It has little drippers at the end or little small sprayers. That's one method. These are the little drippers and little sprinkler adapters that go on. We have an entire workshop on irrigation, so I'm going to go through this really quickly. You can use these emitter lines, which have built-in emitters on them, one every 12 inches or so. There are many variations. This is that award-winning yard. This is how they irrigate it. In this method, you lay down the irrigation before you plant. And then this waters all the soil. You don't have to worry about where you plant because it just waters all the soil and waters deeply. This is the method I went to in my vegetable garden, having used the drippers before. Alice and I actually are both fans of using emitter lines. If you're going to do something that really wants overhead watering, and there are not that many plants to do, but if you have them, these more efficient sprinkler heads are the most like rain, and they fit right on a sprinkler head. You can just convert an existing sprinkler to using these. They're great. So let's see here. So let me give you a couple of examples of some conversions. This was a lawn, and now it's a vegetable garden. 1,000 square feet of lawn, and now it's a native plant garden with low water plants. This was 1,000 square feet, and now it started out as a native meadow with local grasses and perennials, and this is what it looks like now. So now we're going to give you some resources that you can use.
So I hope you enjoyed the conversation so far about design and planning and irrigation. But we wanted to give you some really good resources that we've been using over the years. And I'll start with Wuckles. So Wuckles is it's a searchable website that was developed by the Department of Public Works and Water in Sacramento, and they have combined 3,500 landscape plants, and they've categorized all of these typical landscape species into low water, high water classifications. And this was a collaboration between academia as well as landscape professionals. So they went through things such as, let's say, Japanese maples, Acer palmatum, and they determined for all the 7 regions of California is this a tree that uses a lot of water or not much water? It's quite fascinating to play with this. You can enter your zip code and choose low water use, and you'll get, you know, a huge supply of plants to choose from. So this is Wuckles, and you can get to Wuckles by using this site. The next resource that I want to recommend is one that that Chrissy has a lot of experience with. She's going to show you a live presentation of the Cowscape website.
Okay, give me a second.